The lights flickered in the long hallway of Station Gamma 7. They had been flickering for 3 years now. Taeho had tried to fix them many times, but some things were too broken to repair. He had learned to live with the flickering. He had learned to live with many things. Taeho pushed his cleaning cart down the empty corridor. The wheels squeaked against the metal floor. It was the only sound in the station, besides the hum of the life support systems and the beating of his own heart. He was 34 years old, and he had been alone on this station for 5 years. The station floated at the edge of Valorian space. Once, it had been full of life. Diplomats from Earth had walked these halls. Valorian ambassadors had clicked their mandibles in the conference rooms. Children had played in the recreation areas while their parents tried to stop a war. They had failed. The war came anyway. The Valorians won. Taeho remembered the day everyone left. The evacuation ships had come quickly. People grabbed what they could and ran. Taeho had been a medic back then, helping wounded soldiers in the medical wing. When the last ship was about to leave, his commander had called for him. "Taeho, we're leaving, now." But Taeho had looked around at the empty station. Someone needed to stay. Someone needed to keep the systems running until the official shutdown orders came. The power cores needed monitoring. The water recyclers needed maintenance. Without care, the whole station would fall apart. "I'll stay," he had said. "Someone has to." His commander had looked at him like he was crazy. Maybe he was. But Taeho had seen too much death in the war. He was tired of fighting. He was tired of watching people die. He wanted something simple. Something quiet. He wanted to fix things instead of breaking them. So he stayed. The shutdown orders never came. Earth was too busy losing the war to remember one small station at the edge of space. And after the war ended, humanity was too broken to care about anything except survival. Taeho was forgotten. The station was forgotten. And that was fine with him. He stopped his cart outside a window and looked at the stars. They were beautiful tonight. They were always beautiful. Sometimes Taeho wondered if anyone on Earth was looking at the same stars. Probably not. Earth had bigger problems than looking at stars. His stomach growled. He checked his watch. It was time for the evening feeding. Taeho left his cart and walked toward the old medical wing. His footsteps echoed in the silence. The medical wing had been abandoned like everything else, but Taeho had turned one section into something special, something secret, something that gave his lonely life meaning. He typed the code into the door panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Warm air rushed out to meet him. He stepped inside and smiled. The room was full of small nests. Taeho had built them himself from thermal blankets, old clothes, and pieces of soft fabric he had found around the station. Each nest was carefully shaped into a circle, and inside each nest was a small creature with shiny black skin and tiny mandibles. Valorian larvae. There were 17 of them. They chirped when they saw Taeho. Their little legs waved in the air. They knew him. They loved him. He was the only parent they had ever known. Taeho knelt down beside the first nest. "Hello, little ones. Are you hungry?" The larvae chirped louder. Yes, they were hungry. They were always hungry. Taeho pulled out a container from his pocket. Inside was a thick paste he had made from processed protein, vitamins, and minerals. He had spent months learning how to make it. Valorian larvae needed very specific food to survive. The wrong nutrients would kill them. Taeho had read every file in the station's database about Valorian biology. He had experimented. He had failed many times, but he had never given up. He fed the first larva with a small spoon. It grabbed the paste with its tiny mandibles and ate happily. Taeho moved to the next nest, and the next, and the next. Feeding all 17 took almost an hour. While he worked, he hummed a song. It was an old Korean lullaby his grandmother had sung to him when he was a child. The melody was soft and slow. The larvae seemed to like it. They always calmed down when he hummed. Taeho had found them 5 years ago, on the day everyone left. They had been in a storage unit in the lowest level of the station. The unit had collapsed during the evacuation, and no one had checked it. No one had known the larvae were there. Except Taeho. He had heard a strange sound while doing his rounds 2 weeks after the evacuation. a soft chirping. He had followed the sound to the collapsed unit. When he dug through the rubble, he found them. 17 small eggs in a broken incubation chamber. 7 of the eggs were already cracked. Tiny larvae were crawling out, crying for food. Taeho had stared at them for a long time. They were Valorians, the enemy. His people had died fighting their people. By all logic, he should have left them there. Let them die. No one would ever know. But they were babies. They were helpless. They were alive. Taeho could not walk away. He had spent the next 5 years keeping them alive. It was not easy. Valorian larvae needed warm temperatures. Taeho had rerouted power from other parts of the station to keep the nursery heated. Valorian larvae needed special food. Taeho had gone hungry many times so they could eat. Valorian larvae needed constant care. Taeho had not slept more than 4 hours at a time in 5 years. But they were alive. All 17 of them. And when they chirped at him with their little voices, Taeho felt something he had not felt since the war began. He felt purpose. He felt peace. He felt love. Tonight, as he finished feeding the last larva, the station shook. Taeho looked up. The lights flickered harder than usual. A deep rumble passed through the walls. He knew that sound. He had heard it many times during the war. A ship was arriving. He set down his feeding spoon and walked to the small window in the corner of the nursery. Outside, against the field of stars, he saw it. A massive warship. Its hull was black and smooth, shaped like a great beetle. Valorian design. Taeho's heart beat faster. In 5 years, no ship had come to the station. No one had remembered this place. Why now? Why tonight? The warship moved closer, its docking lights activated. It was coming in. Taeho looked back at the larvae. They were watching him with their big, dark eyes. They did not understand what was happening. They only knew that their father looked worried. "It's okay," Taeho said softly. "It's going to be okay." He did not know if that was true, but he said it anyway. That was what parents did. He walked to the door and typed in the lock code. The door sealed shut. He adjusted the temperature controls one more time. Then he sat down in the center of the room, surrounded by his children, and waited. Whatever was coming, he would face it. He had made his choice 5 years ago. He had chosen to stay. He had chosen to care for these children. He would not abandon them now. The station shook again as the Valorian warship docked. Heavy footsteps echoed somewhere in the distance. Taeho closed his eyes and hummed his grandmother's lullaby. The larvae chirped softly in response. And together, they waited for the door to open. Empress Velith stepped off her warship and onto the cold metal floor of Station Gamma 7. Her royal guards walked beside her, their weapons ready. Their footsteps were heavy and loud in the empty corridors. Velith was tall, even by Valorian standards. Her body was covered in smooth black armor that looked like polished stone. Her eyes were large and compound, made of 1,000 tiny lenses that saw everything at once. 2 long antennae rose from her head, twitching slightly as she tasted the air. She had ruled the Valorian Empire for 200 years. She had conquered 12 star systems. She had crushed the human coalition in a war that lasted only 18 months. Now, she had come to this forgotten station for one simple reason: to strip it of its technology before the final surrender documents were signed. It was supposed to be a quick visit, a boring duty. The station was abandoned. There was nothing here but old machines and empty rooms. At least, that was what she had believed. "Empress," said Commander Rivik, walking beside her, "our scanners have found something strange." Rivik was her most trusted advisor. He was shorter than Velith but built like a tank. His armor was scratched and dented from many battles. He had served her for 150 years. "What is it?" Velith asked. Her voice was cold and sharp, like breaking ice. "A life sign. One life sign. In the medical wing." Velith stopped walking. Her antennae twitched with surprise. "A human?" "Yes, Empress, just one." This was unexpected. The station was supposed to be empty. All humans had evacuated 5 years ago. Why would one stay behind? "A spy," Velith said. or a saboteur. Take a squad and capture them. I want answers. Rivik bowed his head. At once. Empress. But Velith changed her mind. Something about this situation bothered her. One human, alone, for 5 years. What were they doing here? What were they planning? Wait, she said. I will come myself. Rivik looked surprised but did not argue. He never argued with the Empress. They moved through the station like ghosts. The hallways were dark and dusty. Old posters hung on the walls, advertising diplomatic events that never happened. Peace talks that failed. Hope that died. Velith felt nothing as she walked past these reminders of the past. Humans had tried to stop her empire. They had failed. That was the natural order of things. The strong conquered, the weak submitted. This was how the universe worked. They reached the medical wing. Rivik checked his scanner. The life sign is ahead. Behind that door. Velith looked at the door. It was sealed. Someone had locked it from inside. Were they hiding? Were they preparing a weapon? Open it, she ordered. One of her guards stepped forward. He pressed a device against the door panel. The lock sparked and died. The door slid open. Velith stepped inside. And then she stopped. The room was warm. Much warmer than the rest of the station. Soft light filled the space. And on the floor, surrounded by small nests made of blankets, sat a human male. He was thin and tired. His hair was messy and gray in some places. His clothes were worn and patched in many spots. He looked like he had not slept well in years. But that was not what made Velith freeze. Around the human, in those small nests, were Valorian larvae, 17 of them. Their shiny black bodies reflected the soft light. Their tiny mandibles clicked softly. They were healthy. They were alive. And they were looking at the human like he was their mother. Velith could not move. She could not speak. Her compound eyes took in every detail of the scene. But her mind could not understand what she was seeing. The human looked up at her. His eyes were calm. Not afraid. Not angry. Just tired and calm. Your people left them behind, he said simply. I couldn't let them die. Velith's mandibles clicked together. In her language, this sound meant confusion. Deep confusion. How? She finally asked. Her voice was softer than before. How are they alive? The human shrugged. I learned. It took time. I made many mistakes. But I learned. He picked up a small container and a spoon. One of the larvae was chirping loudly. It was hungry. The human scooped some paste from the container and held it out. The larva grabbed the food with its tiny mandibles and ate happily. Velith watched this like she was watching something impossible. And in many ways, it was impossible. Valorian larvae were difficult to raise. They needed exact temperatures. They needed specific nutrients. They needed constant attention, even in the best Valorian nurseries. With trained keepers and advanced technology, some larvae still died. It was a sad truth of her species. But this human, alone, with no training and no technology, had kept 17 larvae alive for 5 years. Who are you? Velith demanded. The human finished feeding the hungry larva before answering. My name is Teho. I was a medic. Now I'm the janitor. Why did you stay? Someone had to maintain the station. And the larvae? Why did you care for them? Teho looked at her with those strange human eyes. They were small and simple, not like Valorian eyes at all. But somehow, they seemed to see right through her. Because they needed someone, he said. And I was here. Rivik stepped forward, his weapon raised. Empress, this is clearly a trick. He wants to use the larvae as bargaining chips. We should take him prisoner and— Be quiet, Velith said. Rivik fell silent immediately. He had served the Empress long enough to know when she was thinking. Velith looked at the larvae. They were not afraid of her or her guards. They had never seen other Valorians before. They only knew this human. When one of them felt scared, it crawled toward Teho. Not away from him. They trusted him. They loved him. He could have contacted us, Rivik said quietly. He could have demanded ransom, food, safe passage, but our records show no transmissions from this station in 5 years. Velith's antennae twitched. That was strange. If this was a trick, why did the human never try to use it? She walked closer to the nests. Her guards tensed, but she waved them back. She knelt down slowly, bringing herself to the level of the larvae. One of them looked at her curiously. It had never seen another being like itself before. "Hello, little one," Velith said softly. The larva chirped nervously and crawled behind Teho's leg. Something sharp twisted in Velith's chest. A feeling she had not felt in a very long time. She did not know what to call it. Teho reached back and gently patted the scared larva. "It's okay," he said. "She won't hurt you." He looked at Velith. "You won't hurt them, will you?" It was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was a question. A simple question from a tired man who had given everything to protect children that were not his own. Velith stood up slowly. Her mind was racing. This changed everything. This changed nothing. She did not know what to do. "We will take the larvae back to the ship," Rivik said. "They belong with their own kind. As for the human stays," Velith said. Rivik looked confused. "Empress? Look at them, Rivik." Velith pointed at the larva. They were clustered around Teho now, chirping nervously at all the strangers in their room. "They don't know us. They don't trust us. If we take them by force, they will be terrified. They might refuse to eat. They might die." She looked at Teho. He was still sitting calmly among the larvae, his hand resting on the back of the scared little one. "For now," Velith said, "the human stays with the larvae. I want guards posted outside this room. No one enters without my permission." "And what do we do with him?" Rivik asked. Velith was silent for a long moment. Her compound eyes studied the human janitor who had done the impossible. "I don't know yet," she finally admitted, "but I intend to find out." She turned and walked out of the room. Her guards followed. Behind her, Teho began humming softly. A strange melody. A human song. The larvae settled down, their chirping fading into peaceful silence. Velith paused at the door and looked back. The human was not watching her. He was focused entirely on the children. She left without another word, but the image stayed in her mind. A human, alone and forgotten, caring for the children of his enemies. For the first time in 200 years, Empress Velith did not know what to think. The next morning, Velith ordered Teho to be brought to the old conference room. 2 guards escorted him through the dusty hallways. He walked calmly between them, his worn shoes making soft sounds on the metal floor. The conference room had once been beautiful. A long table made of polished wood sat in the center. Comfortable chairs surrounded it. Large windows showed the stars outside. But now everything was covered in dust. The chairs were pushed aside. No one had used this room in 5 years. Velith sat at the head of the table. Rivik stood beside her. His arms crossed over his chest. 2 more guards stood by the door. Teho was pushed into a chair across from the Empress. He did not resist. He simply sat and waited, his hands folded on the table. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Velith leaned forward. "I have questions." "I expected that," Teho said. "You will answer them. All of them. Truthfully." Teho nodded. "I have nothing to hide." Rivik made a sound of disbelief. His mandibles clicked with anger. Everyone has something to hide, especially enemies. Teho looked at the commander. "I'm not your enemy. I'm just a janitor." "You are human," Rivik said. "That makes you an enemy." Teho did not argue. He simply turned back to Velith and waited. The Empress studied him carefully. His body showed no signs of fear. His heart rate, which her senses could detect, was calm and steady. Either he was very good at hiding his emotions, or he truly had nothing to fear. "Tell me everything," Velith said, "from the beginning." So Teho talked. He told her about the war, about being a medic on the front lines, about watching his friends die, about the blood and the screaming and the endless suffering. His voice was flat as he spoke, like he was reading from a report. But his eyes grew distant, seeing things that were no longer there. He told her about the evacuation, about choosing to stay behind, about the silence that followed when everyone was gone. I thought the shutdown orders would come in a few weeks, he said. Maybe a month. But they never came. The war ended. Humanity lost. Everyone forgot about this station. Everyone forgot about me. Were you not angry? Velith asked. Teho thought about it. At first, yes. But anger takes energy. I didn't have energy to spare. There was too much work to do. He told her about finding the larvae, about the collapsed storage unit, about the tiny eggs and the crying babies. I knew what they were, he said. I had seen Valorians during the war. I knew these were your children. But when I looked at them, he paused, searching for the right words. They were so small, so helpless. They didn't choose to be born during a war. They didn't choose to be left behind. They were just babies. So you decided to save them, Velith said. No, I decided not to let them die. That's different. Rivik stepped forward. What is the difference? Teho looked up at the commander. Saving someone means you're a hero. Not letting someone die just means you're not a monster. Velith's antennae twitched. This human had a strange way of thinking. Show me, she said suddenly. Show me how you kept them alive. Teho nodded. There's a terminal in the station's main computer. It has all my records, my research, my notes, everything. Velith ordered her guards to bring the terminal. They carried it into the conference room and activated it. The screen flickered to life. And then Velith saw 5 years of records, thousands of entries, every feeding time, every temperature adjustment, every health check. Teho had documented everything with the precision of a scientist. But the most important files were the video logs. The station's cameras had recorded everything. Velith ordered them played. The first video showed Teho finding the larvae. He was younger in the recording, less gray, less tired. He dug through the rubble of the collapsed storage unit. When he found the eggs, he stopped. For a long time, he just stared at them. Then he picked one up carefully, like it was made of glass. The second video showed his first attempts at feeding them. He had made paste from emergency rations, guessing at the nutrients they needed. The larvae refused to eat. Some of them got sick. Teho's face in the video was pale with worry. He worked through the night, reading files, adjusting recipes, trying again and again. The third video showed a crisis. One of the larvae had stopped moving. Teho held it in his hands, his eyes wet with tears. He worked on it for hours, warming it, feeding it tiny drops of liquid, talking to it constantly. Come on, little one. Don't give up. Please don't give up. By morning, the larva was moving again. Teho collapsed against the wall and cried. Velith watched video after video. She saw Teho go hungry so the larvae could eat. She saw him stay awake for days when the station's heating system failed. She saw him sing to the larvae, play with them, name them. He had given them Valorian names that he found in the database. Each larva had a name. Each one was special to him. Enough, Velith said quietly. The screen went dark. The room was silent. Rivik's expression had changed during the viewing. The anger was gone from his eyes. Something else had taken its place. Something that looked almost like respect. Why? Velith asked Teho. Her voice was softer now. You had no food, no help, no hope. Why did you keep trying? Teho was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was tired but steady. When I was a child, my grandmother told me a story. There was a great flood, and all the animals were drowning. A small bird flew back and forth, carrying drops of water in its beak, trying to put out the fire that had started on the mountain. The other animals laughed at it. What can you do? They said. You're just a small bird. You can't save everyone. But the bird kept flying, and it said, I cannot save everyone. But I can save someone. He looked at Velith with those strange human eyes. I couldn't end the war. I couldn't save humanity. I couldn't fix anything that mattered. But I could keep 17 children alive. So that's what I did. Velith did not respond. She could not respond. For the first time in 200 years, she had no words. Rivik cleared his throat. Empress, what are your orders? Velith stood up slowly. Her legs felt strange. Weak. She had never felt weak before. Put him back in the nursery, she said. The larvae need him. And then? Velith looked at Tejo. He was watching her calmly, waiting to learn his fate. I don't know yet, she admitted again. I need to think. She left the conference room and walked to the observation deck. The stars spread out before her, endless and cold. She had conquered many of those stars. She had killed millions to build her empire. And yet, one human janitor had done something she could never do. He had chosen mercy when it cost him everything. He had chosen life when death would have been easier. Why? Velith did not understand, but she wanted to. For the first time in her long life, she truly wanted to understand. Behind her, she heard the guards escorting Tejo back to the nursery. She heard the larvae chirping with joy when they saw him return. And she heard him singing. That strange human song. Soft and gentle and full of love. Velith closed her eyes and listened. The stars watched in silence. 3 days passed on Station Gamma 7. Velith spent most of that time watching. She watched the nursery through the security cameras. She watched Tejo care for the larvae with the same patience and love he had shown for 5 years. She watched her own soldiers change. It started with the guards posted outside the nursery door. At first, they stood stiff and silent, doing their duty without interest. But by the second day, they had started watching through the small window. By the third day, they were talking about what they saw. The small one on the left, one guard said to another. It learned to climb yesterday. The human was very proud. The human has names for all of them, the other guard replied. He calls the climbing one bitna. It means shining in his language. News spread through the warship. Soldiers who had no reason to visit the nursery found excuses to walk past it. They wanted to see for themselves. They wanted to see the human who had saved Valorian children. Velith knew this was dangerous. Her soldiers were warriors. They were trained to hate humans. They were trained to see them as weak and primitive. If they started seeing humans differently. Rivik came to her quarters on the third night. His face was worried. Empress, we have a problem. Velith already knew what he was going to say. The soldiers are talking. Yes, they are. Confused. They do not understand why a human would do what this one did. Some of them are starting to question things. What things? Rivik hesitated. Everything. Empress. The war. Our teachings. Our beliefs about humans. Velith turned to look out the window. The station floated silently in the darkness. Beyond it, the stars burned with cold light. And what do you think, Rivik? She asked. The commander was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. I have served you for 150 years. I have killed more humans than I can count. I believed they were animals. Creatures without true souls. That is what we were taught. And now? Now I do not know what to believe. Velith nodded slowly. She understood. She felt the same confusion. There is another problem, Rivik said. We tried to take the larvae to our ship's nursery. They refused to eat. They cried constantly. When the human was brought to them, they calmed immediately. But when he left, they became sick again. They have imprinted on him. Yes. Completely. If we take them from him, they will die. Velith closed her eyes. This was worse than she had feared. In Valorian society, imprinting was sacred. When a larva imprinted on a caregiver, that bond was unbreakable. The caregiver became responsible for the larva's well-being until it reached adulthood. To break that bond was considered one of the greatest crimes in their culture. But how could she explain that to the other queens? How could she tell them that 17 Valorian children had imprinted on a human? The council will demand answers, Rivik said quietly. They already know we are here. When they learn about the larvae, they will want the human executed. I know. If you protect him, they will see it as weakness. Queen Saren has been waiting for a chance to challenge your rule. This could give her that chance. Velith turned sharply. Her compound eyes flashed with anger. I am aware of the politics, Commander. I have been playing this game longer than you have been alive. Rivik bowed his head. Forgive me, Empress. Velith's anger faded as quickly as it had come. She was not really angry at Rivik. She was angry at herself, at the situation, at the universe that had put her in this impossible position. "Leave me," she said. "I need to think." Rivik left without another word. Velith sat alone in the darkness for a long time. Then she made a decision. She stood up and walked to the nursery. The guards snapped to attention when they saw her. She waved them aside and entered the room. Teho was sitting in the corner, reading from a small data tablet. The larvae were sleeping in their nests, their small bodies rising and falling with each breath. The room was warm and quiet and peaceful. Teho looked up when Velith entered. He did not seem surprised. "Empress," he said simply. Velith walked to the center of the room and looked at the sleeping larvae. They were beautiful, in their own way. Innocent, unaware of the war and politics that surrounded them. "You knew we might kill you when we returned," she said without looking at Teho. "Yes. Yet you stayed. They needed me." Velith finally turned to face him. "Why? Why do you care so much? They are not your species. They are not your family. They are the children of your enemies." Teho put down his tablet. He thought carefully before answering. "When I was in the war," he said, "I saw terrible things. I saw humans do terrible things to Valorians. I saw Valorians do terrible things to humans. Everyone had reasons. Everyone had excuses. Everyone was so busy hating that they forgot why they were fighting." He looked at the sleeping larvae. "After the war, I was empty. I had no hate left. I had no anger. I only had tiredness and sadness. And then I found them." He smiled softly. They didn't know about the war. They didn't know about hate. They just knew they were hungry and scared and alone. And I thought, maybe this is my chance. Maybe this is how I can fix something. Not the big things, not the war or the politics or the pain, but this one small thing, these 17 small lives. He looked back at Velith. "So I stayed. And I cared for them. And slowly the emptiness inside me started to fill up again. They saved me as much as I saved them." Velith stared at him for a long moment. Her antennae twitched with emotions she could not name. "You are the strangest creature I have ever encountered," she finally said. Teho smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "I've been called worse." Velith almost laughed. Almost. She had not laughed in a very long time. She walked to the nearest nest and knelt down. The larva inside stirred slightly but did not wake. It was the smallest of the 17, the one that had almost died 5 years ago. The one Teho had saved. "This one," Velith said quietly. "What did you name it?" "Her name is Hanul. It means sky in my language." Hanul. Sky. A human name for a Valorian child. Velith reached out slowly and touched the larva's shell. It was warm and smooth. The larva made a soft sound and curled closer to her finger. Something cracked inside Velith's chest. Something old and hard that she had built up over 200 years of war and conquest. "My people left them here to die," she whispered. "We forgot about them. We didn't even notice they were gone." "People forget many things during war," Teho said gently. "But you remembered them. A human remembered what we forgot." Velith stood up. Her decision was made. She did not know what the consequences would be. She did not know if she would survive the political storm that was coming. But she knew what she had to do. "I will protect you," she said to Teho. "And I will protect them. Whatever it takes." Teho looked at her with something like hope in his eyes. "Why?" Velith looked at the sleeping larvae. "At Hanul. At the future." "Because someone has to," she said. She walked out of the nursery without looking back. But as she left, she heard Teho begin humming again. That strange, beautiful song. And for the first time in 200 years, Empress Velith felt tears in her eyes. The Council of Queens met on the Valorian homeworld. The chamber was vast, carved from black stone that had stood for 1,000 years. 5 thrones sat in a circle, each one holding a queen who ruled part of the great empire. Velith sat in the largest throne. She was the High Empress, the ruler of rulers. But today, she did not feel powerful. She felt like a soldier walking into battle with no weapons. Queen Saren spoke first. She was old and cruel, with scars across her shell from ancient wars. Her compound eyes glowed with hunger. "You have done something extraordinary, Velith," Saren said. Her voice was like poison wrapped in silk. "You have found 17 of our lost children. We should celebrate," the other queens murmured in agreement. But Velith knew this was a trap. "However," Saren continued, "there is the matter of the human, the one you have chosen to protect. His name is Teho," Velith said calmly. "I do not care about his name. I care about the insult to our empire. A human raised Valorian children. A human was trusted with our young while our own people forgot they existed. This is shameful. The shame belongs to us, not him," Velith replied. "We left those larvae to die. He saved them." Saren's mandibles clicked with anger. "He is an enemy. An animal. He should be executed, and the larvae returned to proper caregivers. The larvae have imprinted on him. If we take them from him, they will die. Then they will die with honor, as Valorians should." The chamber fell silent. Velith felt cold rage building inside her. She looked around at the other queens. Some of them agreed with Saren. She could see it in their eyes. But some were uncertain. Some were thinking. Velith stood up from her throne. "I have ruled this empire for 200 years, she said. Her voice echoed through the stone chamber. "I have won more wars than any of you. I have built more colonies, conquered more systems, brought more glory to our people. You do not question my strength." She walked down from her throne and stood in the center of the circle. "But strength is not everything. I have learned that lesson on a forgotten station at the edge of space. I learned it from a human janitor who had every reason to hate us, and chose instead to love our children." She looked at each queen in turn. For 5 years, that man gave everything he had. He went hungry so they could eat. He stayed awake so they could sleep. He sang to them, named them, protected them. Not because he wanted something in return, not because he thought he would be rewarded. He did it because it was right. Velith's voice grew stronger. "We teach our children that humans are weak. We teach them that humans are inferior. But what I saw on that station was not weakness. It was a strength we have forgotten how to understand. The strength to choose mercy. The strength to care for those who cannot care for themselves. The strength to do good when no one is watching." She turned to Saren. "You call it shameful that a human raised our children. I call it shameful that we left them behind. I call it shameful that in 5 years, not one of us thought to check that station. Not one of us remembered those larvae. A human remembered when we forgot. That is not a mark against him. It is a mark against us." Saren's eyes burned with fury. Pretty words. But words do not change reality. The human is an enemy combatant. Our laws are clear. Then I will change the laws. The chamber erupted in noise. Queens shouted. Guards tensed. This was unprecedented. No High Empress had ever changed the ancient laws. Velith raised her hand. Silence fell. "I declare the human Teho to be a protected ward of the Valorian crown," she announced. "He will be given full rights and protections. The larvae will remain in his care. Anyone who harms him or the children will answer to me personally." Saren's mandibles trembled with rage. "You cannot do this." "I just did." The other queens looked at each other. This was a turning point. If they supported Saren, there would be war between the queens. If they supported Velith, everything would change. One by one, they bowed their heads. Saren was alone. The old queen stared at Velith with pure hatred. "You have made a grave mistake, High Empress. This is not over." "No," Velith agreed. "It is just beginning." 3 months later, the galaxy changed forever. Velith delayed the final surrender negotiations with humanity. Instead, she proposed something new, a peace conference. Real peace, not the humiliation of total surrender. She requested that human diplomats come to Station Gamma 7 to discuss terms. And she made one unusual request. Teho would serve as a cultural advisor to the talks. The humans were suspicious at first. Why would the great Valorian Empress care about a janitor? But when they learned his story, they understood. The peace conference lasted 6 weeks. It was difficult. Both sides had centuries of hatred to overcome. But every night, after the formal talks ended, something remarkable happened. The diplomats from both sides would gather in the nursery. They would watch Taeho care for the larvae. They would see human and Valorian together, not as enemies, but as family. And slowly, the walls began to fall. On the final day of the conference, Empress Velith stood before the assembly. Behind her, the first human-Valorian joint diplomatic vessel was being prepared for launch. It would carry representatives from both species back to Earth and then to the Valorian homeworld. We have spent centuries believing that strength is found only in conquest, Velith said. We believed that mercy was weakness and compassion was foolish. But I watched a human, alone and forgotten, keep 17 of our children alive for 5 years, not for reward, not for survival, because he believed their lives mattered. She looked at Taeho, who stood in the crowd with Haenel on his shoulder. The little larva had grown bigger over the months. She was healthy and curious, always looking around with her big compound eyes. If this is what humanity is capable of, Velith continued, then perhaps we have been fighting the wrong enemy. Perhaps the true enemy is the hate inside ourselves. The room was silent. Today, we begin a new chapter, not as enemies, not even as allies, but as two species willing to learn from each other. She raised her hand. May the stars witness our promise. Peace, now and forever. The assembly burst into applause. Human and Valorian voices mixed together for the first time in history. That night, Taeho sat in the nursery one last time. Tomorrow, he and the larvae would travel to the Valorian homeworld. They would live in a new place, surrounded by new faces. It was exciting and terrifying. The larvae clustered around him, sensing his emotions. They chirped softly, asking if everything was okay. Everything is fine, Taeho said, petting their smooth shells, just thinking about the future. Haenel climbed into his lap and looked up at him. Her mandibles clicked in a pattern he had learned to recognize. It meant love. It meant trust. It meant family. Taeho smiled and began to hum. It was his grandmother's lullaby, the same song he had sung for 5 years. The larvae settled down, closing their eyes, feeling safe and warm. The door opened softly. Velith stepped inside. She watched the scene for a moment, then walked over and sat down beside Taeho. They love you very much, she said quietly. I love them too. Velith was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again. I never thanked you for what you did. Taeho shook his head. You don't need to thank me, I didn't do it for thanks. I know, that's what makes it special. She looked at the sleeping larvae. You saved more than 17 children, Taeho. You saved 2 civilizations. Do you understand that? Taeho thought about it. He was just a janitor, just a tired old medic who had wanted a quiet life. He had never expected any of this. I just did what anyone would do, he said finally. Velith shook her head. No, that is where you are wrong. Most people would not do what you did. Most people would have walked away. You are different. That is why you matter. Outside the window, the first human-Valorian joint vessel departed. Its engines glowed blue against the black of space. A new era was beginning, and it had all started with one man, one station, and 17 small lives that someone refused to let go. Taeho continued humming his grandmother's song. Hanuel clicked her mandibles, trying to hum along. She was getting better. She was learning. The stars watched in silence as the old gave way to the new. And somewhere in the universe, a small bird carried water in its beak, one drop at a time, believing that even the smallest act of kindness could change the world. It was right.